Welcome to the Weekly Transit, a podcast exploring the intersection of Western astrology and Jungian psychology. Astrology is a language that communicates how the planets and stars influence life on Earth, while psychology helps us navigate both conscious and unconscious experiences. Together, these tools offer the potential for self-understanding, growth, and transformation. Join astrologer Scott Tajarian and me, psychotherapist Gabriela Durso, as we dive into the cosmic forecast each week.
Welcome to the Weekly Transit. This is the week of December 18th to the 24th. This week we will be discussing 8 transits. I also wanted to make a quick announcement, but I did record a YouTube video with the amazing psychic Dallisa Hocking, where we go month by month by month to cover everything that is happening in 2024 energetically, astrologically, how to work with the energy. The link is in the show notes. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, give it a click and listen in. It might be a nice guide to have for the whole year of 2024. And if you're curious to know how 2024 is shaping up for you, specifically for you, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com, and we will cover what 2024 looks like for you.
Any teasers for us collectively for the year ahead?
Some key words are values, self-worth, material well-being, boundaries, connecting the unconscious to the conscious, and finding your self-esteem through facing your insecurities. These are some of the major themes for 2024.
So in some ways it's an introverted year because there's a lot of inner work happening.
In some ways, yes, because of planets in Taurus and planets in Pisces, which are both introverted signs. However, there's also that balance of extroverted energy as well, because there's a lot going on in Aries with Chiron and the North Node, and then Jupiter transiting into Gemini. Aries and Gemini are extroverted signs. So it's really a balance between the two. But I think of those 4 energies as being the main players for 2024. Pisces, Aries, Taurus, and Gemini.
So we have each of the elements represented.
All 4 elements. Pisces is water, that's the unconscious. Aries is fire, that's self-confidence. Taurus is earth, that's self-worth and values. And Gemini is air, and that's consciousness, communication. Those are the 4 signs that are really holding the energetic field or tone of 2024.
Okay, beautiful.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah. So if you want to check that out, Scott has two hours or so of getting more into the details.
Yes.
Wonderful.
You can listen to me ramble for 2 hours, and Dallisa keeps me.
She's the guardrails.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like my role as well.
Exactly. I need guardrails whenever I'm talking, because I will just ramble all over the place.
You get in the zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I checked out Dalisa's YouTube page.
Oh, you did?
This week.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I hadn't really heard her speak before.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was very intrigued.
Okay, cool.
By some of her other videos,
Awesome.
too. So.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
She's a really amazing woman. So.
Wonderful.
Yes.
All right, so you're going to highlight for us the transits this week.
Yes, so what we're covering this week are 8 transits, beginning with one of the transits that we covered the end of last week, which we also covered 2 weeks ago, which the reason why we're covering it so much is because Mercury is doing its retrograde dance. But this is Mercury retrograde, Trine Jupiter retrograde, Mercury in Capricorn, Jupiter in Taurus. That's the first one. The second one is Venus in Scorpio, opposing Uranus retrograde in Taurus. The third transit is Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, forming a sextile to Saturn in Pisces. The highlight of the week, like the main event of the week, is the sun transiting into Capricorn, the winter solstice. That's the fourth transit. The fifth transit is the sun and Mercury will be forming a conjunction in Capricorn as Mercury retrogrades back and the sun moves forward into Capricorn. That will be followed by the sixth transit, which Mercury will retrograde then into Sagittarius, so we'll cover what that means. The seventh transit is Mars in Sagittarius, forms a trine with the North Node in Aries. And then finally, the eighth transit is Venus in Scorpio, forms a trine with Neptune in Pisces.
Busy week.
Busy week. Lots happening. Yes. So the first transit this week is Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, which forms a trine with Jupiter retrograde in Taurus. This is a transit that we started to feel last week around Saturday, December 16th, and it's continuing Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the way until about December 20th, which is Wednesday. So this is the main transit at the beginning of the week, and it's the third week in a row that we're talking about this. What conversations are you having in terms of your business, your career, your goals, your ambitions, whatever it is you're working to achieve? I mean, Capricorn is a major theme of the week this week. I don't know if that's a theme or...
it's a strong influence.
It's an influence, yeah. Yeah. Capricorn is a major influence this week, with the sun also transiting into Capricorn this week. But Mercury has preceded the sun, and it aligned with Jupiter retrograde in Taurus. Jupiter is the god of thunder, lord of justice, the planet of luck and expansion. Taurus is the fixed earth sign symbolized by the bull. Mercury is the messenger of the gods, guide of souls to the underworld, the planet of consciousness, communication, and coordination. Capricorn is the cardinal earth sign symbolized by the goat. So we have these two earth signs, two planets and two earth signs. One is the planet of communication, the other is the planet of expansion. They first aligned December 6th through the 9th. This is the second time that they're aligning in this way. It will happen a third time when both of the planets are direct again, but that doesn't happen until January. So the universe is bringing something to the table here. It's saying this is your opportunity to take an expanded conscious look at what it is you value, at your self-worth, how you're able to communicate what you value, and advocate for your self-worth from a position of authority.
One thing that's coming up for me is this image of Capricorn, which is the mountain goat, making its way up the mountain. So there's a longer term sort of agenda with this Capricorn energy. It's not, that quick, impulsive, fiery energy, for example, of say Aries. There's a long play there. And I'm thinking about my years in corporate America, where we were always planning for the year ahead and trying to chart the course. And of course the course might change, right? As you start to climb, you might have to detour or your plans might evolve. So I'm wondering, in regard to like how that might relate to communication, is in terms of your work relationships, how how might your communication need to change as your needs change, or as you're now on a detour that is different from what you planned? You might have different needs that need to be communicated.
Exactly. So how do you have to recognize those needs first. You have to acknowledge those needs. You have to say, well, this isn't a need. If you're in a negotiation with an authority figure or with somebody over a contract in terms of your financial or material well-being, how do you know if one is better than the other? If what somebody is offering you is really something that you value or not? That's up to you to determine.
Right.
Is that
is what I'm feeling into on some level, but I'm also thinking of an example.
Tell me.
Let's say you start a new job, and you come into the job with a job description. You are clear on what your role is, and you start doing the job, and you realize that a part of your job description is something that's just not working for you, and you want to renegotiate. You've realized, hey, I've committed to something that's not connected to my values. And so in order to move to that next ledge of the mountain, you realize you need to renegotiate with that authority figure. Maybe it's a manager. So maybe your needs were met when you were at the base of the mountain, and you start to climb and realize in order to move forward into that next chapter, you need to communicate differently than you did. So part of this for me, I think, is around the acknowledging and a willingness to really move forward. It's time to move forward. What do you need to build? What do you need to communicate in order to be able to move forward in life, in work, in your skills as a communicator, in your relationship with authority figures?
What do you need to communicate? And what you need to communicate is grounded in your values. And it's like the values are the ledge that you're standing on. You value the ledge because without the ledge, you would fall. So finding that ledge, that boundary. I think part of it is boundaries. Like when I think of Taurus, I think of boundaries. The bull wants space. The bull values space. It's like you were saying, if you're in a new job and then maybe all of a sudden there's responsibilities being thrown to you that, oh, I didn't realize this was my responsibility. Well,
or I agreed to it and it's really not working. Maybe it's too much.
Yes.
It's more than you can really handle.
So I think,
or want to handle.
And I think part of what's important to convey about this transit right now is that Mercury's retrograde. Back December 6th to the 9th, Mercury was direct. When these two planets realign, Mercury and Jupiter in Capricorn and Taurus realign in January, they'll both be direct. So the fact that they're both retrograde right now might also mean take a pause. Let's not maybe make decisions on whether or not this is something I'm willing to do or not do. I don't know if I want to commit to anything right now, because there could just be a lack of clarity with Mercury slowing down, moving retrograde.
So maybe it's a time to reevaluate what you've already committed to.
That could be, yes. It definitely, and then you have the Jupiter piece, which is, I think of Jupiter as like philosophy. It's the planet of ethics and spirituality. It's the judge. So it's important to have some thoughtfulness around the words that you're choosing, the decisions that you're making, how you're evaluating your values. There's a lot to think about here.
There is. So this is more of a planning stage than necessarily an action-oriented stage.
I think it's more planning than actual decision making. It's Let's feel it out. Let's think about where we were in the beginning of December. Where are we at now? Where do we want to be by around January 19th? Which is, this is like these dates that keep coming up over and over again. Like we were talking last week, Mercury Retrograde began at 8 degrees in Capricorn. Mercury moves out of its retrograde transit on January 20th. That's the same day that the Sun and Pluto transit into Aquarius. This is the same time that Mercury and Jupiter will be realigning with each other. I don't know if it's possible for you, but if you can wait maybe until at least mid-January to make the decisions of whatever is sort of percolating right now in terms of your work or your goals, your ambitions, what you're trying to achieve. This is the reflection review period, reevaluating, and then mid-January, January 20th, if you can hold off until then, is when the decisions will be clarified.
Yeah, I guess want to normalize that this Mercury retrograde time period can include some confusion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's okay if you don't have the clarity. You're not meant to have it yet.
Yes, exactly. And one of the gifts of this being like during the holiday season is hopefully you don't have to make any big decisions right now in terms of your work or your career, because this transit is happening. Maybe you're already on vacation for the holidays, So, yes. The second transit this week is Venus, Lady Luck, the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships, transiting through the fixed water sign, symbolized by the Scorpio, opposing another planet in Taurus, not Jupiter, but Uranus, the primordial sky god, the planet of revolution, rebellion, innovation, independence, and the unexpected, transiting retrograde through Taurus. This transit is occurring most strongly from December 18th to the 22nd. That's Monday through Friday. So this is a major effect all week long. Monday through Friday, we're feeling this. There's something symbolic about this transit.
How so?
Well, because when you look at the symbol for Venus, and then you look at the symbol for Uranus, they relate to each other. They're related to one another. And if you're not sure what the symbols look like, you can pick up my book, The Basics of Astrology, that shows all the symbols. But there's 3 root symbols to the language of astrology. There's the circle of spirit, which represents your eternal soul, no beginning, no end. There's the cross of matter, which represents the 4 elements of matter: fire, earth, air, and water. And the crescent of receptivity, which represents giving, receiving, teaching, learning. Venus is a circle of spirit on top of a cross of matter, symbolizing your eternal soul in the world of matter and what it senses. The 5 physical senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Uranus is that same symbol if we flipped it upside down and then added a crescent of receptivity on either side of the cross of matter, symbolizing your eternal soul in the world of matter and what makes it unique, what makes it unpredictable, what makes it different from everyone, what makes your senses different. That's why Uranus or Aquarius is the sign, the planet that represents homosexuality. Because it is different than, say, what is the conformed way of sexuality. The conventional way of sexuality. Exactly. So,
well, even in the way that the crescents of receptivity there are more of them, would indicate that there are more ways of orienting.
Exactly.
Whether it's
where you could go
sexually,
this way or that way. It could be it's bi, right?
Whether it's sexuality or whether it's just relating to the world from different perspectives.
Exactly.
In other ways,
yes,
you have more ways that you're receptive.
Yes. There's also I love that reflection. There's also the mythical origin of these energies. So Uranus is a Greek god, and Venus is a Roman god. Venus in the Greek tradition is Aphrodite, and Aphrodite comes from Uranus. Uranus was castrated by his son Kronos, who in the Roman myths is known as Saturn. Kronos castrated his father Uranus, threw the family jewels into the sea, and out bubbled up Aphrodite. So,
wow.
Yeah. So if you look at the symbol for Uranus and you castrate those two crescents of receptivity and flip it upside down, you get Venus.
I'm trying to understand the symbolism there. How Venus, representing love and beauty, could be born out of that castration energy.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard for me to reconcile.
Exactly. What is the symbolism there? What is that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking, I guess what comes to mind is Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist perspective of no mud, no lotus.
Ah, yes, exactly. It grows from the shit.
It grows from literally the waste.
Yeah, the waste. Yeah, exactly.
But I guess I'll have to reflect more on how else to interpret that.
Yes. The bottom line is you can see how these two planetary energies have a unique relationship to one another. And adding to that is the fact that Uranus is transiting through Taurus. Taurus is ruled by Venus. So Taurus is in the home of Venus, opposing Venus. It's like you're here and you see, oh, that person's in my house over there, but you're not in the house. And so Venus is seeing Uranus in her house across the zodiac, shaking things up, shaking up our relationship to the material. Our sense of security is being shaken right now. While Venus in Scorpio, the deepest, darkest, most passionate sign. The deepest, darkest, most passionate sign, the planet of relationships transiting through this sign. It's like if your material well-being is shaken to its core, you need, who can I hold on to? Who can I bond with to help me feel secure? And that bonding, that holding on to someone, maybe you're holding on too tightly and they're like trying to shake free. Or maybe someone's holding too tightly to you and you're trying to break free. So there is a lot of agitation going on this week in terms of intimate relationships. There may feel like the urge to break free or rebel from your intimate commitments.
I'm thinking about, if there's an earthquake, the first thing you do is try and hold on to something.
Yes.
So to me, that Uranus in Taurus, I immediately think of an earthquake, like something moving through a solid mass, and then the mass itself that doesn't usually move, shaking.
Totally.
Being shaken up.
Well, and we've talked about this before. We've mentioned it many times where the day that Uranus transited into Taurus was the day of that great lightning storm in Southern California.
I remember that.
So that to me was like prophetic. It's like Uranus is now in Taurus and there's hardly ever a lightning storm in Southern California. But it was a crazy night. Weird. So it is kind of an earthquake or a lightning storm or something that is shaking up your material well-being and the energy that you're exchanging with others on an intimate level.
But it's shaking it up for the purpose of revealing something to you.
Oh yes.
That's supportive.
Well,
ultimately.
Let's hope. Yes, absolutely.
Well, it's revealing in some way.
Yes.
That might feel threatening or exposing initially, but ultimately, that Uranus energy it's the energy of invention and genius.
Well, in Scorpio's transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So Scorpio's secrets. So
Right.
maybe Uranus in Taurus it's shaking that up. It's shaking up your material well-being or your sense of security.
Mm-hmm.
Connecting to Venus in Scorpio, shaking up your relationships. Through the shaking up of your relationships, it's secrets are being revealed. You're like, oh, that's how you feel about me? Okay. I didn't realize that you thought that way about me. Mm-hmm. There may be some conversations that come up and words that are shared between lovers or people that are sharing money or secrets to each other. New secrets are being revealed. Mm-hmm. That might cause one of, if not both of the parties to feel overly exposed to one another, which, like you said, on the positive side, will ultimately lead to a necessary transformation where you feel more secure.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about just how there's the light and the shadow part of this transit.
Of course, yes.
And you could say that there is for every transit.
Yes.
But in the short term, the discomfort will ideally lead to a longer term sense of clarity on some level.
Yes.
Whether it's clarity to move deeper into those relationships or clarity to move away from those relationships. Either way, that information will prove valuable.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Our third transit for the week, again, Mercury Retrograde in Capricorn, now aligning in a sextile, a positive supportive aspect with Saturn, the god of wealth and time, the planet of restriction, responsibility, hard work, achievement, and authority, and the planetary ruler of Capricorn, the sign where Mercury is retrograding through. Saturn, though, is transiting through Pisces, the mutable water sign symbolized by the fish. This transit is something that we will be feeling most strongly Tuesday to Friday, December 19th to the 22nd. This is bringing that sense of reality to our unconscious. What are my dreams? What are my fantasies for what I want to achieve? Like, I'm thinking about 2024 and all my goals and ambitions and what I want to accomplish. I'm manifesting them. But what are the steps that I need to take? Is there a step that I missed along the way that I need to look back and review and maybe restructure it in some way so that it's more stable for the climb?
It's interesting that you just brought up manifestation.
Yeah.
Because that word was coming up for me in the last transit.
Tell me.
I was wondering if that Uranus energy was bringing in insights that would support clearer manifestations. I can't get this image of the lightning bolt out of my head. And to me, that's a sort of an image that could represent manifestation because it's providing, it sort of comes out of nowhere, seemingly, and cuts through the sky with this beautiful precision. And it's chilling, right?
Yes.
When you're...
It's like... wakes you up like, oh.
It's like a shiver.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a shiver, like something moves through...
It's like getting slapped across the face.
The universe, and it moves through you as part of the universe.
Yes.
There's like this powerful ripple effect.
Wow.
And I think that's how the beginning stages of manifestation, or even the moments when manifestation comes to fruition can feel. To me, it's almost electrical in nature.
Yes. That's what an idea is, right?
Yeah.
Like when the light bulb just goes on, that image of the light bulb going on, or that story, whether it's true or not, that was it Sir Isaac Newton discovered gravity when like an apple fell on his head?
Yes.
You know, it's like, oh, it's gravity. You know? So it can feel like a slap across the face, or you know, it's like a jolt. So something is coming through. So as that transit is happening with Venus and Scorpio opposite Uranus and Taurus, as that is happening at the same time, you have Mercury in Capricorn retrograde aligning with Saturn in Pisces. And it's trying to awaken that idea that is percolating beneath the surface of your mind. Like you said a couple weeks ago, when the unconscious is like the seed beneath the surface. But when it comes to the conscious is when the seed starts to sprout above the surface. Maybe this week is when the seed is starting to sprout and poke through the surface, and we're starting to, I can see how this can come to fruition. It's not bearing fruit yet, but I see the plant rising out of the soil. And that is bringing in that manifestation of there's going to be fruit that this tree will bear. But in order to do it, I need to do the work of watering it, making sure that it has enough sunlight.
Yeah,
being a part of the process.
Absolutely. I love any of these analogies around gardening because
you're a Virgo moon.
Because I'm a Virgo moon. No, but also I think we can learn so much about our relationship to plants and how we interact. Even with our house plants, it gives us a lot of information about how we are in relationships. Do you water too much? You don't water enough. It's data, but also on a larger scale, we are so out of touch with the cycles of the earth because we buy food at the grocery store, most of us. And so we forget how long it actually takes once you've planted a seed for it to bear fruit, for example, or even to push through the surface. You know, we're standing there like we've lost faith that nothing's happening. But there's a whole, I mean, to me, that point between planting the seed and when it comes to the surface, like you alluded to, like that is the unconscious. And we know that there's something happening in that space, but we can't see it. And so maybe we devalue it, or we don't give it enough attention. Because
we can't see it.
Right.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of Thich Nhat Hanh again, who's one of my favorite authors. And he used to say, or he says in many of his books, that we all have seeds within us, a seed of anger, for example, a seed of fear, a seed of love. We have each of the emotions are represented by a seed in this example. And which seeds are you watering in your close personal relationships? Are you watering their seed of anger? Are you watering their seed of fear? And how are they doing the same for you? Like, what are you choosing to nurture of all of the possibilities of what could grow for you or in the relationship, which is basically manifestation?
I mean, this is absolutely brilliant what you're sharing, because it also speaks to that aspect that we were talking about earlier with Venus in Scorpio, opposite Uranus in Taurus. Venus in Scorpio, the shadow side of that could be watering paranoia, manipulation, which is rooted in fear, rather than watering vulnerability. Like, I'm going to water the seed of love, which will allow me to be more vulnerable in the relationship, which will benefit the relationship.
And what he's really saying, without saying it directly, is how much power we have to nurture the parts of ourselves, but the parts of our partners that we would like to see grow the most. So instead of saying to your partner, giving them a laundry list of all the things that you don't like that they do, because that's watering the seeds that you don't want that to grow anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we can water the seeds that we would like to nurture.
Yes.
So it's all about where you're giving your energy, which in this analogy is the water. Water is the energy of nourishment.
So would that be applicable to like this Venus and Scorpio opposite Uranus and Taurus, where, it's like Scorpio is ruled by Mars, which is the most courageous planet. So part of that transit could be encouraging the ones that you're intimate with to be more vulnerable by encouraging them to feel safe, because you're watering that seed of love, which is encouraging them to be more vulnerable, which is deepening the bond. And you're also, when you're watering the seed of love, that's what you're saying in terms of your values, that Taurus energy.
Right.
That I value love over fear. And so I'm going to have the courage to love you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the Scorpio piece too, Scorpio is about two parts merging together. And we used, I think, the analogy a couple weeks ago of like dancing. Like it takes two to tango. It takes two to dance. So when you're choosing to water the seed of, when you're choosing to be courageous and water the seed of love in another, you're ultimately choosing that for yourself as well. Because the more, in a healthy partnership, ideally what you're nourishing in the other person, their energy of love in this example gets greater. And so then what they're giving back to you is love.
Yes. Yes. It's like when people say, like, if you hate somebody or you're sending negative energy to someone, you're ultimately just hurting yourself. Whereas if you're loving somebody, the vibe of love is growing within you. And that's going to make you stronger. Right? Is
Absolutely.
this like what you're saying? Yes?
Yeah.
Am I reflecting that?
You are.
Okay.
And I think the courageous part of that is in giving the love, but also in allowing yourself to receive the love.
To receive love.
To receive it. So I think that it sort of comes full circle when it's in that highest expression of Scorpio, which is, which would be when both parties are mutually feeling lifted by the exchange.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So our next transit for the week that we'll be covering, the fourth transit for the week, is the sun in Capricorn, which the sun will be transiting through Capricorn from December 21st to January 20th. That date we keep mentioning. The sun transits through Capricorn every year from around December 21st to January 20th. Just depends on the year exactly and where you are on the planet, but this year it's December 21st to January 20th. In the northern hemisphere, this is the winter solstice. It's the shortest day of the year. It's very symbolic of Capricorn when you think about December 21st being the shortest day of the year and every day after that getting a little bit lighter, and you think of the goat starting in the valley and then working its way up to the top of the mountain. So we're at the bottom right now. We're at the bottom. We're at the bottom of the mountain. We're at the lowest stage. We haven't even made it to the base camp yet. We still got to climb to the base camp. So think of it as like this is you starting at zero. You're starting at zero. Where do you want to be by the summer solstice, which is June 21st? Where do you want to be by then? So you've got 6 months. Over the next 6 months, from the shortest day of the year to the longest day of the year, What do you want to achieve during that period? What do you want to accomplish? And a few words were coming up for me before we started recording. Capricorn is the sign of achievement. And when I think of achievements, like a simple metaphor is sports. When you win the championship, when you're holding that Super Bowl trophy or whatever the trophy is, the World Cup, you've achieved something. You've worked. You've committed your time. Saturn is the god of wealth and time. Time is not something that can be traded. There's no infinite amount of time. You can't add more time to anything. It's like the most precious resource that we have, because at some point time runs out. And so what are you spending your time on? How are you spending your time? Whatever you're spending your time on, what is it bringing to you? Saturn is the god of wealth and time.
Time is money.
Time is money.
Yeah, that expression.
You work 8 hours a day. You don't want to get paid for 6.
Right.
Totally.
It's
It's like if you're a lawyer, let's say, and you are charging someone a certain amount of money an hour, you're like, that person makes so much money per hour. They also worked a lot of time. They spent a lot of time on their craft that they didn't get paid for. I have spent thousands of hours cultivating my skills as a guide and an astrologer that I haven't been paid for.
And so have I in grad school.
Exactly.
Which I did pay for.
Well, and that's the thing. You don't get paid, but you are paying. You are paying with time. You are paying with money. And so in doing that, you achieved something. You achieved knowledge. That knowledge has value that you are now getting paid to share with others.
Right.
I was just thinking about winning and achievement. So there's that.
Okay.
And so you think about winning and losing. You either win or you lose. But then I was thinking about the word lose and the word lesson. Because I think you're either winning or you're learning. You're learning a lesson. And at the root of the word lesson is less. Loss, less. These two words have a relationship to each other.
Yeah.
So you've maybe lost something, but you're learning from the loss. So however you're spending your time, there is no time that is wasted. We often think I'm wasting my time. You've only wasted your time if you've learned nothing from the time that you've spent doing whatever it is you're doing.
Right. Absolutely.
There is no wasted time. There is maybe not cultivating what you've learned from the time you've spent doing whatever it is you're doing, which is something you could be working on. But something to think about, something to ponder.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting interpretation of that word lesson. I hadn't really considered that, because that's not really how I think of a lesson, that somehow it's worth less than winning.
Right. Because that's not how the word is thought of. A lesson is to learn something. But why is the word less in the word?
I don't know. I don't resonate with that as a... I mean, I hear what you're saying as an interpretation. But I think, what are you learning as a... I've said this before, as a mantra, what can I learn is the greatest currency.
Yes.
To me, that's more important than a trophy. Because those lessons on a spiritual level, in my belief system, you get to take with you from life to life. You can't take a trophy with you.
Right, exactly. I guess this is my attempt to flip the connotation of the word loss. Because a loss is a lesson. You're learning something from the loss.
Right.
Whatever it is you lose, a game, a friendship, anything, there's something to learn from that experience, and whatever it is you learn from that experience is what you take with you. Like you said, it becomes a part of your soul, and you grow.
This time of year coming up, the new year, is, I guess, a time for me where I'm always trying to reconcile, I think, what's being asked of us collectively versus how I feel every time this time of year. So I think this is more prominent if you live somewhere where there's a traditional winter, which we don't have here in Southern California. But I grew up in Vermont, and so this time of year was always this like sleepy, snuggly, you know, I think of the animals that hibernate. So I wonder, what do you make of that association with Capricorn season and needing to sort of rebuild? Because for me, this time of year isn't really about working. It's more about resting and more about, I mean, you just look at what happens on the earth. The earth is resting. It's not time. Well, I guess under the surface, maybe it's preparing for spring. But what do you make of that? Because January 1st, it's being drilled into us that we have to have all these New Year's resolutions. It's time to jump into action. And that's just not what I see reflected in nature. So I guess my question is around like the astrological perspective of that.
Well, the astrological new year is Aries season, the beginning of spring. So, yeah, I hear you with, this is a time to rebuild. That's what Capricorn is about. Capricorn is about building. Sagittarius, like we said a week or two ago in one of the episodes, it's like the wildfire. It burns everything down. So Capricorn comes after Sagittarius and is rebuilding.
And I guess, would you say that could be what hibernating is? Because you're recharging?
Maybe. I guess so. You know, I mean, the thing is like, and it's true for like where you come from, but like for people that are in the southern hemisphere, it's the beginning of summer. It's a totally different vibe.
Yeah.
So
I guess you can't generalize.
You can't generalize in terms of the seasons of weather, because where it is in one place, it might be the complete opposite in another. So I just think energetically for Capricorn, astrologically, it's like this is a time to reflect on everything that you've been working to achieve, and now is the time to bring that into fruition. The energy is here for you to climb, to take responsibility for everything that you've worked on, that you've worked to achieve, and now to make that push, to accomplish whatever goals you've set out to achieve. I somewhat wonder, I mean, maybe this is too far off the beaten path, but it's like football, American football is such a popular sport, and I kind of wonder if it is part of it just energetically, astrologically, because it coincides with this energy where it's like as the games get to December and then to January, they become more and more important. It's like when you're climbing up the side of the mountain, the closer you get to the top, every single ledge becomes more important. You're almost there. You're so much closer. And so
Interesting.
there is something that is building now. So what are you building? Where are you focusing your energy? What are you working on? How are you spending your time? And for those that were born with key astrological points or planets in Aries or Libra, this could be a challenging period for you because Capricorn is cardinal earth, Aries is cardinal fire, Libra is cardinal air. They're all cardinal, but fire scorches earth, earth extinguishes fire, and air and earth don't mix. So you think of that Aries energy is very impatient. If you're the goat that's just blindly running up the side of the mountain, you're going to fall off. You're going to die because you were rushing. Whereas Libra
energy is deciding which way to go up the mountain.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Oh my God.
We eventually, in our defense, we eventually make it up the mountain.
You do?
In our own time.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Really?
Yes, we do.
In a luxury helicopter flies you to the top and you're like, this is the best way to get to the top.
We're shopping for the hiking boots, okay? We're
It's gotta
shopping
be the right style.
for the right footwear.
Yes, exactly. It's got
And
to be
then
the
you
right.
have to decide which way to go. So they're just a couple steps before we get there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's all.
I love it.
I hear what you're saying about Capricorn season, and I'm just, I guess, relating to it differently. Well, I'm also thinking about like my family's lineage. I mean, my last name, Durso, means of the bear.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about like,
This is your hibernation period.
this is my hibernation period. I'm not about to go climb a mountain.
Yeah. Well, even in the springtime, you're not climbing a mountain.
I don't really want to climb a mountain in the spring either, but yeah, it's just interesting, our perceptions and associations with certain times of year. And what does that mean for the way that we build and move forward in life?
Yes. The next transit they were highlighting is as Mercury moves retrograde and the Sun moves into Capricorn, they cross paths through Capricorn. So they're conjunct most strongly Thursday, Friday, Saturday, December 21st to the 23rd. And the last time the Sun and Mercury were conjunct was in Libra back October 17th to the 21st. So Mercury and the Sun, they do this several times every year where they cross paths, where Mercury's retrograde, and then Mercury retrograde ends and then eventually catches up and passes the Sun and then slows down and moves retrograde, and then the Sun moves past Mercury. So this is one where Mercury's retrograde, the Sun's moving forward, but it's illuminating consciousness. The Sun is the giver of light, life, and vitality. Mercury is consciousness. It's illuminating our minds. And so it's going to give us a lot of time to really think about, is Capricorn season for hibernation or for work?
Or for hiking.
And and it's all how you want to spend your time. So, if...
And it's all about what you want to build, ultimately.
Yes. It's like the bear is like, look, there's nothing for me this time of year. So in order for me to achieve my goals, which is to hunt for fish and whatever else I need to do in order to procreate and take care of myself, I need to make the best use of my time, which in the winter is sleeping, resting. So if you don't see Gabriella for the next several episodes, it's because she's in hibernation.
I'm hibernating.
Yes, exactly. So it's all how you want to spend your time. So think about it.
Well, and there are these different expressions, different parts of planet Earth that are experiencing different ways of building, from a weather perspective. And then these different species, too, that are all just giving us examples of how we could be orienting. But there's really no right or wrong.
Exactly. That's why it's all about how you want to spend your time. It's not up to me to say, well, you're wasting your time. When somebody says you're wasting your time, they're claiming to be the authority over you. If somebody tells you that you're wasting your time, they're claiming to be the authority over you. They're saying that I know better how you need to utilize your time than you do. Mm-hmm. And you can either agree with them or not. But this energy is really about you holding yourself accountable for how you're using your time. And when you're holding yourself accountable for how you're using your time, ultimately you're saying, whatever I'm doing all day long, whether I'm sleeping or working, I'm making the best use of my time. Mm-hmm. And no one else can tell me otherwise because I'm the authority.
Right.
And so when you look at the 6th transit for the week, that's when Mercury retrogrades back into Sagittarius. So Mercury has its second stint in Sagittarius. The first one went all the way through from 0 to 29 degrees. This second one, retrograde, Mercury is going to highlight the last 8 degrees, 22 through 29. That's where Mercury is retrograding. So Mercury retrogrades into Sagittarius, the mutable fire sign, symbolized by the archer, Katniss Everdeen, Robin Hood, from December 22nd to January 13th. So you're having that sort of struggle over speaking up for yourself, being the authority of what's in your mind, in communicating from that place. If you're struggling there, that's why Mercury is back in Sagittarius, to rip off the filter and just speak your truth. No one can tell me anything. It's like the sun's in Capricorn. Okay, that's about time. Well, I'm going to tell you how I want to spend my time. I'm free to spend my time however I want to spend my time. And no one's telling me how to spend it. It makes me think of you, baby.
Why?
Like, there's been times where I will get on you for watching a show, and you stand up for yourself and you advocate that. I'm learning a lot from watching Gilmore Girls. You know?
Yeah.
And you see the value in it.
Well, I'm a big believer that whatever we're drawn to, whether or not it seems like there's substance in it or not, that there's a reason we are. Because there's a character that's reflecting either a part of ourselves, not necessarily us in totality, but a part, which is, something you can explore in therapy. Parts work, it's called. Parts work.
What's that?
It's acknowledging the diversity of who each of us are. And in some ways, I think it's...
a lot of different parts.
Yes. Yeah. And in some ways, I think it's acknowledging, like, without directly acknowledging your astrological code, but it's acknowledging that we have all of these intricacies and different parts of ourselves, some of which are contradictory.
Of course.
Which is normal. And astrology helps us normalize that. If you have your sun in creating a square with your ascendant, those would be two very different parts of you that are both real and valid and deserve to have expression.
Yes, you see it all the time in people's charts. When I do readings for people, I'm always like, I'm going to say something about you, and then at some point in the next hour, 90 minutes, however long we have together, I'm going to say something else about you that's going to contradict what I had said earlier. Because we're all incredibly diverse, complex individuals.
Absolutely. So with the example of Gilmore Girls, like, what drew me to that show is that in some way it reflects my experience growing up in a small town in Vermont. So it's my way of sort of, through watching the show, reflecting on my own relationships, times when it was idyllic, times when it wasn't, and looking at it in totality.
Yes.
The show is also primarily really about a mother-daughter relationship, which most of us are working on some level or have at some point in our lives.
Yes.
So I think when you're drawn to something, whatever feels like your work, or even, times when we tell ourselves we're just escaping, which is, when you settle into a show, typically you're doing it because you want to escape in some way. But I would argue that there is always a deeper reason why you're drawn to that material. And you just might not know what it is yet.
Yes.
So I always end up with interesting insights, whether it's that show or, almost any show that I'm feeling drawn to.
Yes. That you're uncovering something within yourself, or you're learning something about yourself through watching the show.
You are. Or even if you don't like a show, like there's information for you there too.
Yeah.
What don't I like about this? Is it reflecting an aspect of me that is in my unconscious? I've just rejected this show, but really it's an area I need to get in touch with.
Yes.
Like one of the shows that's probably the hardest for me to watch are those like Real Housewives of whatever city, because they're just going at each other. It's so much conflict. And I'm someone who historically
doesn't want the conflict.
Doesn't want to be around conflict.
Yeah.
So that's one way, maybe for me to safely engage in conflict, because I can turn it off if it gets to be too much. But it's kind of like exposure therapy, where, for example, if you have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and you have an association that if something happens in your environment, that there'll be a horrific outcome, or there'll be circumstances that you won't be able to cope with. Exposure therapy would put you in in that environment where you could face that fear,
and you're going to be okay.
And once you experience that you're okay, and exposure therapy, I should say, is controversial. Not everyone thinks that that's really okay for your nervous system or really the right way to handle that. But in some way, engaging with this Real Housewives show could be exposure therapy for someone who is struggling with conflict.
Yes.
So this is an interesting tangent, but I would just say, yeah, whatever you feel like your work is, I think you will find it, and it will also find you.
And that's part of maybe this retrograde transit in Mercury, is allowing your mind to go on a journey, to experience an adventure, to explore something so that you can broaden your horizons. Sagittarius is not just about telling everyone your opinions, though that's a big part of it. It's also about broadening your perspective and
trying something new.
Yeah, allowing your mind to go on a journey, to explore something, a new idea, a new thought.
And this is why we don't always agree on what shows we want to watch.
We don't?
Right?
Oh, I thought we did.
Well, did you ever sit and watch Gilmore Girls with me?
No.
I think the answer would be no.
Yeah.
We want to explore in different directions through our media choices.
Yes. Mercury in Sagittarius is freedom of the mind. If Gabriella wants to watch Gilmore Girls, then she can watch Gilmore Girls. If I want to watch football, then I watch football. And so everybody having their own free expression of whatever thoughts they want to connect to, whatever philosophy they want to connect to, whatever religion or spiritual practice they want to connect to. That is Mercury in Sagittarius. So I encourage anyone listening to look at your chart and notice what key points or planets are between 22 and 29 degrees in air signs, fire signs, or mutable signs, because these are the signs that are aligning most strongly to Sagittarius. So if you were born with the moon in an air or fire sign, air signs being Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, fire signs being Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, if you were born with the moon between 22 and 29 degrees in one of those signs, whenever Mercury transits back and then forward in alignment with your moon, that may be a great time for you to really openly and honestly express your perspective from an emotional level in a way that really connects to your emotions. On the flip side, if you were born with the moon in Virgo or Pisces between 22 and 29 degrees, when Mercury aligns with your moon, it's going to be a square, which is tense, which means that you may have some difficult conversations that touch you on an emotional level where you need to express yourself, and it's not coming out. It's not, your truth is not coming out or landing with the person that you're emotionally connected to in the way that you would hope or want it to. So there's some challenges there. That's just one example.
But in that example, the goal would be to do it anyway, to communicate it anyway, would you say?
I feel like you can't force or stop a bowel movement. Like when the planet...
That's kind of profound.
When the planet comes and it touches on that point, something's going to happen. What happens is all how you're working with the energy. And of course, like I always say, that the more that you're in that North Node frequency, the more maybe your energetic diet is healthy, and that energetic bowel movement is less painful or upsetting. But if you're not, then your energetic diet is unhealthy, and the expression of your emotions in this one example may come out in a way that is more volatile and upsetting than you would want or hope for it to be. But it's not really something that is avoidable. When Mercury squares your moon, it's going to cause some sort of emotional conversation or reaction. How big, how expressive, how volatile, again, is all rooted in your energetic diet, so to speak. Are you living in your North Node, or are you living in your South Node? If you're living in your South Node, it might be more volatile and upsetting than you would want for it to be.
So this could be a good time, if you're noticing that communication is really painful for you, to sort of take your temperature on like the overall health of how you're living, how you're orienting.
Yes. And ultimately, if you're not aware, the energy is there to make you aware. That's the whole point. You know, it's like when people are always like, when are things going to get better? It's all how you're working with the energy. So if things are tense right now, you're getting a strong energetic message from the cosmos that are saying you need to learn a lesson here. The reason why you feel like you're losing in life is because you need to learn a lesson here. You're not being punished. We're not trying to hurt you or harm you. We're trying to make you aware of something so that your soul can evolve and grow. Just some dates to think about, because Mercury is transiting the same portion of the sky from, right now it's 29 degrees Sagittarius back to 22 degrees Sagittarius. It was moving from 22 degrees Sagittarius to 29 degrees November 25th to December 1st. So think back to those dates. What was going on November 25th to December 1st, and how does that relate to right now? So from November 25th to December 1st, Mercury transited from 22 to 29 in Sagittarius. Now Mercury is transiting from 29 to 22 in Sagittarius between today, which is December 22nd, until January 1st. Then January 1st, Mercury retrograde ends, and from January 1st to January 13th, Mercury will be back from 22 to 29 in Sagittarius. So this is how the retrograde works. It's like it was moving from 22 to 29 from November 25th to December 1st. Then it moved back from 29 to 22 from December 22nd to January 1st. And from January 1st to January 13th, it's hitting those same points that it did from November 25th to December 1st. So we're getting this repeat. And that's why it's so important to see which key points or planets are within 22 to 29 degrees in air, fire, or mutable signs, because that's the universe telling you this is where you need to work on speaking your truth. If it's connecting to your moon, then you need to work on speaking your truth from an emotional center. If it's connecting to your Venus, you need to learn to speak your truth in your relationships. If it's connecting with your Saturn, then you need to learn to speak your truth from a place of authority or to the authority. Those are just 3 examples.
So first step is to determine what it is you're supposed to be revisiting, so you can do so consciously. And you might know just from reflecting on that time period.
That is one way.
Or if you're someone who journals, you could look back at those dates and see what was coming up for you.
Exactly. Also, what house, and then from the astrological point, knowing is by knowing what planets Mercury is aligning with. What house or houses is Mercury transiting through during this Sagittarius portion of the retrograde? Is it transiting through your 5th house? If that's the case, then you want to learn to speak your truth from your heart. And to have fun, to enjoy yourself in conversation and thought. If it's in the 10th house, then you need to speak your truth in terms of what it is you want to achieve. So there's a lot happening here.
Yeah, but either way, we're going backwards to retrieve something.
To reflect,
retrieve, review.
Yes.
And I like to think of it as kind of you're bringing something forward with you.
Yes.
You're like bringing some gold
coins. Oh, I forgot that back there. Now I've got to go back and get my bag of gold that I left at the house. I've got to go grab it. Or I left my passport at the house and I need my passport to travel to whatever country I'm going to.
Yes. Exactly. So what did you forget? What did you leave behind? What do you need to look at again?
Yes, exactly. The 7th transit this week is Mars, the god of war, the planet of action, aggression, and conflict, also transiting through Sagittarius, aligning in a supportive, positive trine with the North Node, the soul's purpose, karmic pathway of the soul, transiting through the cardinal fire sign, symbolized by the ram and ruled by Mars, Aries. So it's interesting. This week, we've had 3 alignments where planets transiting through one sign are aligning with a planet in another sign that is the sign that they rule. Where Venus is opposing Uranus in Taurus. Venus rules Taurus. Saturn forming a sextile with Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. Saturn rules Capricorn. And now this transit, Mars transiting through Sagittarius, aligning with the North Node in Aries. Mars rules Aries.
What do you make of that? And would you say that's a gift or a challenge?
I think it makes things it increases the power of the energy. It increases the power of the energy, which can be a gift or a challenge. It all depends on how you're working with the energy. So it's hard to qualify. I would say the Venus transit could be more of a challenge because it's in opposition, whereas the Saturn transit and the Mars transits are more gifts because Saturn is forming a sextile, which is a positive aspect, and Mars is forming a trine, which is also a positive aspect. This transit is something that we're going to be feeling most strongly December 23rd to the 27th, which is Saturday to next Wednesday. And the gift of this is it's giving you the courage to put your words into action. It's not just speaking your truth, it's acting upon your truth. Doing what feels right. And what feels right is in accordance with your authenticity, which is that North Node in Aries piece. I will know if what I'm doing is right because of how I feel. When I act in this way, I feel free because I'm being myself. That's what this aspect is encouraging us to do, is to make the choice that makes you feel free. What's the choice that makes you feel free?
Such a great question.
That's it. So that is really pushing us through the end of the week, and we'll touch on that more next week as well, because it's still going to be in play next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But the final transit this week is another gift. It's Venus, again, in Scorpio, now forming a trine, another trine, with Neptune in Pisces. Neptune is the planetary ruler of Pisces. Venus is exalted in Pisces. So these two planetary energies have a really positive relationship to Pisces. It's bringing in the element of compassion to our intimate relationships, our intimate bonds. This transit as well, just like the Mars and North Node transit, is Saturday to Wednesday, December 23rd to the 27th. So my hope for all of you out there is that by the time we get to the weekend, you're starting to feel everything that you've worked on during the week and it's coming to fruition. And you feel that confidence to make the choice that makes you feel free. And in doing so, you're encouraging yourself to be vulnerable. You're creating space for those that you're intimate with to also be vulnerable. Because when you have the courage to be free, you encourage other people to be free as well.
You live by example.
Exactly.
Which is ultimately how we learn as children.
Yes.
It's
Mama bird, baby bird.
Monkey see, monkey do.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
That's the most powerful way, is to learn by observation.
So how can you be more compassionate and empathetic in your intimate bonds? See things from the other side, but at the same time also feel the energy. Are you receiving the same compassion and empathy that you are giving the other? How can you reimagine the dream, the fantasy of what you want your relationships to be? My fantasy for my relationships are that I feel free and you feel free, that we all feel free, that we're not
facing off,
restricting each other.
Right.
Squeezing you into a box. Well, if you want to be with me, then you have to this, that, or the next thing. And there may be some of that in the early part of the week when Venus is opposing Uranus, and that's the earthquake, the shakeup. It's like, oh, you really feel that way? Okay, well then if you feel that way, then if you want to be with me, then you have to hit all these marks. But then by the time we get to the end of the week, it's like, you know what, you do you. Just you do you. And the other person says, and you do you. And it's like, okay, now we got everything that we want. And we still love each other. It's great.
And maybe those manifestations that we were working on earlier, we've come to realize a way for them to benefit the relationship.
Yes. Where your time and everything that you're working on is somehow within the context of the relationship. That everything that I'm working on is supporting not only me, but the individuals that I'm climbing with to the top of the mountain.
Well, and that Pisces energy too is like, it's like, what are you putting in the water? What are you putting into the ocean?
Yes.
You know, if there's an oil spill in the ocean and you're in the water, it affects you and it affects everything else in the water.
Yes.
So there's this awareness with, I think, the Pisces energy of the way that you affect others and the way others affect you.
Yes.
I think of, you know, you have a glass of water, you put one drop of food coloring in it, and all of the water is affected.
Exactly. Yes. So how are you contaminating the waters of your relationships, and what can you do to transform and cleanse those waters?
Right. And that, you know, what you're putting into the water, there's just, I think, a real sense of responsibility here. That drop of food coloring could be watering that seed of love or watering the seed of fear, just as an example.
Absolutely.
But whatever it is, it's helping us think about just the importance of our impact, what we say, how we show up in relationships, what we choose to express with one another, has a further reach than most of us know. And
now more than ever, in this energetic frequency with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces and Venus in Scorpio. Venus in Scorpio strips everything down in the relationship. So we're more vulnerable. We're more sensitive right now.
Yes.
So the words that you say, the way that you're treating your partner, I mean, it's
but even your thoughts
too. As well. Yes.
I mean, there's an amazing book called The Hidden Messages in Water. I don't know. I'm sure I've told you about it before.
Yes. Well, I know.
Have you read it?
I haven't read it, but there was the documentary several years ago that came out.
Oh, is it based on the book?
I don't know if it was based on the book or not, but it was the same principle where like this guy did an experiment where he took like water bottles and put water in the bottle and then taped like the word love so that it was facing inside the bottle. And another one he did hate, you know, and like the way that the crystals in the water were changed by the simple writing of this word and placed on you could see the difference.
Absolutely. So it's not just what you're saying.
No.
It's what you're thinking. And in this book, there are images of all of these water crystals, and the water crystals that were exposed to loving messages, or like, I love this author also played music, different music to different water crystals.
Yes.
And you can see, there's like, this is a water crystal that listened to Elvis Presley, or this is a water crystal that listened to, you know, Metallica or something, you know,
so cool.
Beethoven. Yeah. And the water crystals that were exposed to love or like classical music, their symmetry is intact.
Oh my God.
Like when you see the symmetry in a plant, the divine,
the sacred geometry.
Yes, the sacred geometry.
Yeah.
You see the sacred geometry, which is what we see in nature, which is kind of our birthright.
Yes.
Like when it's uninterrupted, there's sacred geometry.
Yes. Well, when you look at your astrological code, there's sacred geometry.
Yes.
The way the planets align with each other are all at these angles that create sacred geometry. 30 degrees, 60 degrees, 90 degrees, 120 degrees, 180 degrees.
So these dissonant thoughts or the dissonant music
Yes.
creates an imbalance.
Well, and the important note here, to riff off the music part, is we are 60%, over 60% water.
Exactly. And that's why I'm bringing this in.
Yes. So if you're listening to whether it's music or just somebody that you care about or yourself, whatever message you're sending or is being sent to you is reverberating through your entire body. And it's creating some sort of energetic, whether it's positive or negative force.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're here talking about these energies, so that you can learn how to navigate these energies to the best of your ability, so that this vessel is filled with beautiful sacred geometry.
And those dissonant thoughts or dissonant chords they're important to examine, so that you can determine what there is to learn from that, or you can determine, is this really about the other person, or am I projecting some part of myself that I don't really want to look at onto the other person?
Yes.
And the sooner you can identify the origin of that dissonant chord, you can determine how to work with it, how to reintegrate it into yourself.
Yes.
As soon as we can integrate those dissonant or shadow elements of ourselves into our consciousness, they lose their charge. They just become, like another knick-knack on your bookshelf.
They become a part of the song.
They become a part of the song. They become just a part of, going back to speaking of parts work again, they lose the trigger, lose the charge.
Yes.
And that's easier said than done, but that's the work.
Right. That's the work. Beautiful. Thank you, Gabriella.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
So we've got a couple questions. Well, we have several, but we're going to narrow to some that are
sure. We've always
some that are similar.
We appreciate all the questions. Keep them coming. Of course, we can't answer them all in one episode because we have too many. But we're going to get to every question.
Yes, we have some
eventually.
Really juicy, kind of longer form questions that we're working on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll just do a couple of the shorter ones today.
Couple quick ones.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. So first one. S. Gravette asks, my Venus is in Scorpio. What does that mean for me during this transit?
It means that you're in the midst of your Venetian return. It's when Venus returns to the sign that it was in when you were born. It happens every year. This happens once a year, just like your solar return when the sun returns to where it was when you were born. But if you were born with Venus in Scorpio, everybody right now is experiencing what it is like to be born with Venus in Scorpio. We're feeling that vulnerability, that extra passion, the exposure of secrets in relationship, that intensity of forming a bond with somebody. So if you were born with Venus in Scorpio, it's just highlighting that more for you. It's bringing up more of that for you. And when Venus transits over your Venus, whenever that is, depending on the degree of your Venus, it's most likely going to feel pretty good. Venus is Lady Luck. It's the goddess of love and beauty. So when Venus returns to where it was when you were born, you're going to feel a little extra love and luck and just get into that vibe of Venus and Scorpio. Start stalking your partner's I'm joking. You're supposed to laugh here, Gabrielle.
Stalking your partner's Instagram or something?
Yeah, that's what Venus and Scorpio is. It's like, it's super intense. It's Scorpio's the stalker. So if you're if you're born with Venus and Scorpio and Venus returns to the sign where it was transiting through Scorpio, then it's time to start stalking your ex-lovers.
Well, really, it's a time to go deeper in relationships.
Ah, yes.
So we aren't really condoning stalking.
That's the shadow side.
That's the shadow side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really, it's, I would say, a more comfortable time for you if you have Venus and Scorpio, because other people are getting into your frequency and wanting to relate on a similar level as you.
They're learning what it's like to be you.
Mm-hmm. It's giving other people access to how you feel all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a comfort level there. And Venus and Scorpio, I would say, probably the biggest sort of gripe for a Venus and Scorpio person would be a lot of small talk. Because Venus and Scorpio energy wants to go deep. Levity in social situations, I think, can be challenging.
Yeah, so I think of it as like, if you're a Venus in Gemini, that's like that levity in social situations, keeping things light. So when Venus is in Scorpio, if you're a Venus in Gemini, you're like, ugh, like I don't like all this deep, serious talk. It's too much for me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Venus in Scorpio wants to go deep with people.
No small talk.
No small talk. They want to drop the anchor.
Yes.
Like, let's go scuba diving. Let's go spelunking in the cave.
Yes.
So it can be difficult as a Venus and Scorpio person for you to relate in relationships with others who either don't have the capacity to go that deep, don't have the interest, or maybe just aren't meant to relate that deeply in relationships depending on the details of their chart.
For sure.
Yeah, so there's really a window of opportunity for you here to invite others into this frequency. They're already sort of there, but to recognize that they're there and take it as an opportunity to bond in a way that's meaningful for you and really to merge, which is really what that Venus and Scorpio energy is about, merging with another person.
Yes.
So really taking advantage of this window.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Who do you want to merge with? How do you want to merge?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Good stuff. Thank you, Gabriella.
Thank you. All right. Our last question of the day. Cassidy asks, how long do North Node transits usually last?
About 18 months. About a year and a half. So like when you think of the North Node is in Aries right now. It moved into Aries in mid-July. It moves out of Aries and back into Pisces next January of 2025. So that's about a year and a half.
Okay.
Year and a half. Yeah.
And what would you say is the value of these North Node transits for those who might not be familiar?
The value of it is honing in on your soul's purpose. Just every planet has value, just like the Venus transiting through whatever sign is giving you a sensitivity or connecting your senses, orienting your senses to the energy of the sign. Whereas the North Node is orienting your soul to the energy of the sign. So with the North Node transiting through Aries right now, all of our souls are being oriented towards authenticity. Facing your insecurities or whatever fears you have to be yourself. That's what this is about.
So even if you don't have the North Node in Aries in your natal chart, you're learning this lesson.
Yes, exactly. Just like even if you weren't born with Venus in Scorpio, if you were born with Venus in Gemini, while Venus is transiting through Scorpio, maybe you're having like deeper relationships or deeper conversations or deeper explorations in your relationships than you would typically normally have. If you were born with the North Node in a different sign than Aries, that doesn't mean that you're not benefiting or learning something from this transit. You are. You're learning about who you are. Who am I? Who am I? And if you're somebody who is born with the North Node in Aries, this is like your wake-up call that happens every 18 and a half years. Like when you think about it, it's like when you turned 18, around 18 and a half is when the North Node returned to the sign that it was in when you were born. So at 18, we become an adult in a sense. In some regard, you can vote, whatever else you can do when you're 18. It's like you receive a greater awareness of yourself.
Well, I'm thinking of a musical example. It's like those first 18 years, you've been playing a solo on the violin. And then when you turn 18, there's an orchestra that joins you. Like you then become part of sort of the group consciousness in some way, in a way that maybe you haven't before. And you can start to see your journey reflected in other people's journey. And there's like a mirroring that takes place, maybe on a deeper level. An awareness of how you are part of the whole. Right.
It's a big step. Turning 18, and then 18 years later, 36, 37. About 37 is when the North Node returns to where it was when you were born a second time.
And that's when Jung believed that the individuation process started.
Okay.
Which would make sense.
Yes. So it's all, everything is in concert. Everything is in movement. Everything is growth. You know, the sun is in Capricorn. So we are learning what it's like to be a Capricorn. We're learning what it's like to focus on time and work and goals and ambitions. Just like someone who was born with the sun in Capricorn does 24/7, 365.
It's interesting. You could almost think of it like these collective transits are giving us empathy for those individuals who have this placement in their chart year round. So it's like getting to walk a mile in someone's shoes.
Yes. So it's like if you're somebody who is most comfortable wearing sweats and t-shirts, there is that period where the planet is in the sign that's squaring your sweats and t-shirt sign. Is now in the tuxedo sign. Or if you're somebody who likes wearing sandals, now the planet is in the sign that is requiring you to wear high heels. You're putting on this different energy that makes you feel uncomfortable, but the discomfort is just indicating growth. It's like they say, growing pains. It's not always, it doesn't always feel good to grow. But it's why we're here.
Right. It's getting you out of your comfort zone.
Exactly.
You know what it reminds me too? Like, I feel like this movie has been done many times. And there's actually, I just saw an ad that there's a new version of this movie coming out.
Family swap.
Yes. Where suddenly like
you wake up and I'm
you're
Gabriella.
In someone else's body.
Exactly.
And you're like, this is terrible. All I wanted to do was have someone else's experience, and now that I'm doing it, it's really
not
uncomfortable.
As great as I thought it would be. Right?
Yeah, it's a little more extreme than wearing someone else's shoes, but it's sort of
example,
that.
Though.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that keeps coming up like in movies as sort of like a fantasy experience. Because that is happening for us collectively through this lens of astrology.
Totally.
So on some level, maybe that's us acknowledging that we're capable of that.
Of seeing things from another perspective. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So true. I want to watch this movie now.
It doesn't really look that insightful.
But I think it's one of those funny things where it's like, you know, you like a person who's older will look at it. Someone who's 18 is like,
If only I could go
only
back.
I was that age again, you know? Or the person who's 18 looks at the person who's in their 30s and is like, I can't wait till I'm older. You know,
that's that movie 13 Going on 30, which, by the way, Jennifer Garner is clearly very into this dynamic.
Into that. Yeah, we have to look at her astrological code. I don't think we have her time, but yeah, she's clearly into that.
She's clearly really into it.
This is the second role she's done that is her being in like this other body sort of thing.
Yeah. The best part of the preview for this movie, though, is that the baby becomes the dog and then the dog becomes the baby. So for me, that's the reason to watch.
Yeah, that's cute.
The baby's like drinking out of the water bowl on the floor. So
very cute.
Those are our Christmas plans.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Gabriella. Thank you for growing with me.
Yes, through the growing pains.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, too.
And thank you to our audience for growing with us. And we will see you all next week.
Sounds great. See you then.
Thank you for listening to the Weekly Transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any others may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. If you're interested in delving into the world of psychotherapy with Gabriella, you can connect with her at innervisionpsychotherapy.com. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.